Hello, my loyal listeners. It's good to know you're always there. Kate woke to the smell of coffee. Rich, bold, with notes of caramel. Exactly the way she loved it. On the nightstand sat a white mug, and next to it, a handwritten note. You're the most beautiful when you're sleeping. But even more beautiful when you wake up. Breakfast is on the table. Love you. She smiled, stretched, and picked up the mug. The coffee was the perfect temperature. Andrew always guessed the exact moment she was about to open her eyes. In 12 years of marriage, he had learned her rhythms better than his own. Kate took a sip and glanced at the framed photo on the nightstand. Kate, Andrew, and their son Mikey at the beach in Florida. 3 years ago. Their son was 7 then. He was building a sandcastle, and Andrew was helping him. They were both laughing so hard that Kate's stomach ached from joining in. She had thought then, this is it. This is happiness. Simple, tangible, warm, like this coffee in the morning. She went down to the kitchen. Mikey was already at the table, picking at his scrambled eggs with a fork. Mom, Dad said we're going fishing on Saturday. Are you coming with us? We'll see, Kate said, kissing the top of his head. If I finish my project on time. Kate worked as an architect at a small firm. She loved designing not glass towers, but cozy, human homes with wide windowsills and creaky hardwood floors. Andrew used to joke that she didn't design buildings, but feelings. And there was truth in that joke. Andrew managed a sales department at a large, ambitious real estate development firm. For the last year, he'd been disappearing at work until late. New contracts, negotiations, business trips. Kate understood. A career demanded sacrifices. She herself often sat over blueprints until midnight. They were a team, exhausted, overworked, but still a team. Or so she thought. The first alarm bell rang in October. Andrew returned from a business trip a day early, but didn't tell her. Kate happened to see his car in the parking lot of the mall while she was on her way to pick up Mikey from soccer practice. Delighted, she dialed his number. He didn't answer. He called back 20 minutes later. Sorry, I was in a meeting. My phone was on silent. She didn't think much of it. It happens. Then came the small things. The phone he started carrying with him everywhere, even into the bathroom. A new cologne, not the one she'd given him for their anniversary, but something else sharp, unfamiliar. The late meetings after which he came home not tired, but distracted, as if his mind were miles away. Kate pushed the suspicions away. She was the kind of woman who trusted her husband until she saw the evidence with her own eyes. Her mother, Nina, had drilled it into her whole life. Trust a man until he gives you a reason not to. But if he does, don't forgive. Never forgive. Her mother knew what she was talking about. Kate's father had left when she was 11. He just packed his suitcase one Sunday morning and said, I've fallen in love with another woman. No drama, no fights. As if he were announcing the weather forecast. Nina never cried in front of her daughter, but Kate heard her mother sobbing at night, muffling the sound with a pillow. Those sounds were seared into her memory like a burn. That's why Kate didn't want to see the obvious. Because to see meant to admit, and to admit meant becoming her mother. It meant hearing those same sobs, only now they would be her own. November brought a chill that wasn't just outside. Andrew became distant. No, he still made the morning coffee, kissed her before leaving, and asked about Mikey's grades. But a mechanical quality had crept into it all, as if he were running a well-rehearsed program. Sarah, Kate's best friend, was the first to notice. You've lost weight, she said, when they were sitting in a coffee shop after work. And you have dark circles under your eyes. What's wrong? Just tired. A project is on fire. Kate, I've known you for 15 years. You're lying to me. Kate was silent, turning her cup in her hands. Then she said quietly, I think Andrew is cheating on me. She expected Sarah to comfort her, to say, don't be silly, you know how much he loves you. But her friend just looked her in the eyes a long, serious look and asked, do you have proof? No, just a feeling. You know, it's like you're living in a house, and one day you notice a wall has shifted just a tiny bit. Everything seems to be in place, but something is subtly, irrevocably different. You're an architect, Sarah said. If a wall has shifted, you check the foundation. Kate checked. That very evening, Andrew left for another late meeting, and she opened his laptop. He hadn't changed the password, it was their wedding date. The cruel irony of it. The chats were in a messaging app. Not hidden, not deleted, as if it had never occurred to him that his wife would look. Or maybe he just didn't care. The woman's name was Jenna. Based on the photos, she was young, maybe 27, with long, dark hair and a bright smile. Their correspondence went back to September. 2 months, 2 months of lies. Kate read the messages, her fingers growing numb. Not from the content, there was nothing explicit. Just tender words, plans to meet, photos from restaurants. The cold was coming from inside, from the place where her trust had once lived. She closed the laptop, went upstairs, and peeked into Mikey's room. Her son was asleep, his arms flung wide, smiling in his sleep. Kate leaned against the door frame and stood there for a long time, feeling the world she had built for 12 years crack all around her. Then she went downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for her husband. Andrew returned at 11:30, cheerful, smelling of that same strange cologne. He saw Kate and froze. "You're not asleep?" "No," she said in a level voice. "I'm not. Sit down. We need to talk." Andrew sat across from her, slowly, cautiously, like a man who already understood what had happened but was still hoping he was wrong. Kate saw his eyes flick across the kitchen table, to her clenched hands, to the dark screen of the laptop sitting on the edge of the counter. She saw the flicker of recognition in his pupils. He always left his work laptop in his office upstairs. "Kate, don't start with my name in that tone," she cut him off. "Just tell me, is it true?" He could have lied. He had a few seconds in eternity for a man accustomed to leading negotiations, persuading, selling. Andrew knew how to choose his words like keys to locks. But that night, he was silent. And that silence was more eloquent than any confession. "How long?" Kate asked. "Since September." His voice was hollow, unfamiliar. 2 months. For 2 months, you made me coffee in the morning, kissed me goodnight, and then drove to another woman. How did you do it, Andrew? Purely on a technical level. How did you switch back and forth? Is there a switch in your head? He rubbed his face with his palms. Kate knew that gesture. He did it when he couldn't handle a situation. When Mikey was hospitalized with appendicitis. When their old apartment was flooded by the upstairs neighbors. When a huge contract at work fell through. He rubbed his face as if trying to erase reality and draw a new one. "I didn't plan it. It just happened." "Happened?" Kate repeated. The word sounded like a slap. "Rain happens. Accidents happen. An affair is a choice. Every time you texted her. Every time you lied to me about a meeting. Every time you got into bed with me after being with her. That was a choice, Andrew. Your conscious choice." He lowered his head, and Kate suddenly realized she didn't feel what she had expected. No rage, no hysteria. Inside, she felt empty and hollow, like an unfinished house. The walls were up, but there was no life inside. "Should I leave?" he asked quietly. "Yes." He stood up, paused, looking at her as if he wanted to add something. Then he turned and walked out. Kate heard him go upstairs, the rustle of a duffel bag, the click of a closet door. 15 minutes later, the front doors slammed shut, and his car engine rumbled to life in the driveway. The silence that followed was deafening. Kate sat at the table until dawn. She didn't cry. The tears came later, 3 days later, when Mikey asked at dinner, "Mom, when is Dad coming back from his business trip?" She turned to the sink, turned the water on full blast, and sobbed silently while her son finished his macaroni and cheese. She told Mikey that his dad had gone away for work for a week. Then a week turned into a little longer, and then she had to tell him a part of the truth. "Dad and I decided to live apart for a little while. It's not because of you, do you hear me? Never, ever because of you." Mikey didn't cry. At 10 years old, he was reserved, just like his father. He just became quieter than usual and stopped asking about going fishing. Nina, upon hearing the news, drove over the very next day. Kate opened the door to her mother in a puffer coat, holding a travel bag, with an expression that boded nothing good for Andrew. "I knew it," Nina said, stepping over the threshold. "I felt from the very beginning that he was unreliable. Remember at your wedding, I told you." "Mom, not now, please." Nina stopped short, looked at her daughter pale, gaunt, with dark semicircles under her eyes, and suddenly hugged her so tightly that Kate couldn't hold back. She cried on her mother's shoulder, like she had as a child when she fell off her bike and scraped both her knees. "File for divorce," her mother said, stroking her hair. "Don't drag it out. Rip it off like a Band-Aid. It'll heal faster." Kate filed the papers. 2 weeks later, she went to the courthouse, stood in line, and filled out the forms. Her hand didn't shake. She made a point of watching it. A woman about her age sat next to her, with red, swollen eyes. And Kate thought, We're all the same here. We all thought it would be different for us, that it would pass us by, that our story was the exception. Andrew found out about the filing the same day. He called. She didn't answer. He called again. She turned off her phone. So he came over. He stood at the door, soaked from the rain, without an umbrella, with a lost look on his face she had never seen before. Kate opened the door because Mikey might hear the knocking. "Go away," she said. "Kate, please, 5 minutes. You had 2 months. 5 minutes every single day to tell me the truth. You never took one of them. I was an idiot, I know. But I can't lose you and Mikey. I can't. You should have thought of that before." She closed the door, leaned her back against it, and listened to him standing on the other side. A minute, 2, 5. Then his footsteps sloshed away on the wet steps. But Andrew didn't give up. The next day, a bouquet was at the door, not a lavish, showy one, but a simple bunch of white daisies, her favorite. A note. "I'm to blame. I know that, but I want to fight for us." Kate threw the flowers into the trash can by the curb, then stood at the kitchen window and watched the white petals sticking out of the can, feeling a disgusting knot in her stomach, for reasons she couldn't pinpoint. He came every day, sometimes with flowers, sometimes without. Sometimes he just stood by the gate, as if on guard. Her neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, shook her head. 20 years ago, if my ex-husband had stood there like that, maybe we wouldn't have divorced. Yours, it seems, really loves you. A fool, for sure, but he loves you." Kate didn't answer. She didn't know what she felt. Anger and sorrow were so tightly tangled inside her that she couldn't separate one from the other. 3 weeks later, Andrew called again. This time, she answered. She didn't know why. "I broke up with her," he said. His voice was hoarse as if he hadn't slept for nights. "Right after you found out. That same evening, I'm staying on Alex's couch, going to work, and not sleeping a wink every night. Because I can't stop thinking about what a bastard I was. And what do you want from me? A medal for your realization? No. I want a chance. Just one. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking." Kate was silent. She could hear his breathing on the line, heavy, uneven. And she remembered him breathing just like that when he proposed to her, standing in the middle of a park, clutching a velvet box, his hands shaking. It had made her feel a mix of amusement and tenderness, this big, confident man, trembling like a schoolboy. "I'll think about it," she said and hung up. Thinking about it stretched for a week. Kate consulted with Sarah, who was categorical. He cheated once. He'll cheat again. Don't fool yourself. She consulted with her mother, who was even more so. Your father also asked for a second chance. I didn't give him one, and I was right. He would have just betrayed me again. She even consulted with Mrs. Henderson, who shrugged and said, Your heart will tell you, dear. Your head is a poor advisor in these matters. But her heart was silent, or it spoke too quietly, drowned out by the noise of her resentment. And then Andrew came on a Saturday morning. Mikey opened the door, saw his father, and threw himself into his arms. Andrew swept his son up, held him close, and Kate saw tears streaming down his cheeks. Andrew was crying for the first time in all the years she had known him. He hadn't even cried at his own father's funeral. And here he was, standing in the doorway, clutching their 10-year-old boy, crying silently, his shoulders shaking. Mikey wrapped his arms around his father's neck and said softly, Dad, are you coming back? Kate turned away, gripping the kitchen counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. Andrew put their son down and knelt in front of him. That's up to your mom, buddy. I want to come back more than anything. But I hurt your mom, and now she gets to decide. Mikey looked at Kate, not pleadingly, just looked, with his serious, unnervingly perceptive eyes. And in that second, Kate realized she hated Andrew for putting her in this position. She was the one who had to decide. She was the one on whom it depended whether their son would have a father by his side. The entire weight was on her. And there he stood, beautifully suffering, with tears in his eyes. But the anger passed, because Kate looked at Mikey and saw herself at 11, standing in the hallway as her father left with his suitcase. She remembered that feeling the world was collapsing, and the adults were pretending everything was normal. She didn't want that for her son, but to forgive meant to risk being betrayed again, to risk hearing silence again instead of the truth. That evening, after putting Mikey to bed, Kate poured herself a glass of wine for the first time in a month and sat on the back deck. Despite the cold, the stars were low and sharp and bright. She thought about the houses she designed, how they could be rebuilt after a crack appeared. You could reinforce the foundation, replace beams, pour new concrete. But only if the original structure was sound. If the foundation was rotten, no repair would save it. Their foundation had been sound. 12 years, thousands of morning coffees, shared nights, sicknesses, joys, Mikey's first word, his first step. That was all real, wasn't it? Or had she just imagined it? Kate finished her wine, went inside, and texted Andrew a single word. Come. Andrew came the next morning. Not with flowers, not with gifts, just in a clean shirt, shaven, with dark circles under his eyes that betrayed his sleepless nights. Kate opened the door and let him into the house in silence. Mikey was at his grandmother's. Kate had specifically asked Nina to take him for the weekend. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where a month ago Kate had told him to leave. Andrew placed his hands on the table, and she noticed his fingers were trembling. Talk, Kate said. And he talked. He didn't make excuses, didn't shift the blame, didn't cite fatigue or a midlife crisis. He spoke quietly, looking her in the eyes, and in his voice, there was something she hadn't heard in a long time. A genuine, raw confusion. I don't know why it happened. That's not an excuse, Kate. It's the truth. I still don't understand it. We had everything. You didn't do anything wrong. It was me. I felt like I'd stopped feeling anything. Not you. Just everything. Like life was covered in a film, and I couldn't touch it. And then Jenna appeared, and for a moment, it felt like the film was gone. But it wasn't. It was just a different kind of film. And for that film, you destroyed our family. Yes. And I will live with that for the rest of my life. But I want to live with it next to you, if you'll let me. Kate was silent, looking at his hands familiar. Strong hands that had put a ring on her finger 12 years ago, that had held a newborn Mikey, that had held her at night, that had typed messages to another woman. You need to know, she said finally. If I agree, this is the last time. There won't be a third chance. There will be no talks, no explanations, no tears. I will just leave, and you will never see us again. I understand. No, you don't. You think you do? But I want you to feel it. If you lie to me again once, even about something small, I won't investigate. I will take Mikey, and we will disappear from your life. That's not a threat, Andrew. It's a promise. He nodded, and Kate saw genuine fear in his eyes. Real, unfeigned. The fear of loss. Maybe, for the first time, he truly understood how close he had come to the edge. They agreed on the rules. Andrew wouldn't move back in right away. First, time had to pass. He would come on weekends to see Mikey. They would have dinner together, go for walks, and piece normality back together. And they would see a family therapist. Kate insisted, and Andrew agreed without objection. The first month was strange. They were learning to be around each other again, like two people learning to walk after a long illness. Awkward conversations over dinner, accidental touches that made them both flinch. Mikey watched his parents with quiet hope and tried to be the perfect child, no noise, cleaning his room, doing his homework without reminders. It broke Kate's heart. Her child was afraid that any misstep on his part could shatter the fragile truce. The therapist, a stout woman named Zoe, held sessions in a small office with soft armchairs and dim lighting. In their first session, she said something that stuck in Kate's mind. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means you stop punishing him, and you stop punishing yourself. Kate couldn't do either yet. She would wake up in the middle of the night with a crushing weight on her chest and check her phone, not hers, but the old fear that Andrew was lying again somewhere. Sometimes she would dial his number at 2 a.m. just to hear his sleepy voice and confirm he was home. Andrew never once reproached her, never said, "You don't trust me." He would just pick up and say, "I'm here. Go back to sleep." And she would, for a little while, fitfully, but she would sleep. By the end of the second month, something started to thaw. Andrew began coming over not just on weekends. He'd pick Mikey up from school, help with his homework. One day, Kate came home from work to find them both in the kitchen. Mikey was standing on a stool, stirring batter, while Andrew, covered in flour, was trying to follow a recipe for apple pie. The pie came out lopsided and burned on one side, but Kate ate 2 slices and, for the first time in a long time, laughed. A real, genuine laugh. That night, Andrew didn't leave. Kate asked him to stay. They lay side by side, not touching, in silence. Then Kate rested her head on his shoulder, and he went still, as if afraid to scare her away. "I'm withdrawing the papers," she said into the darkness. Andrew didn't say anything, just pulled her closer, and she could feel his heart beating fast, loud, and frightened. The next morning, she called the courthouse, clarified the procedure, and made an appointment. Withdrawing the petition was easier than filing it a few signatures. A brief conversation with a clerk, the formal question, "Are you sure?" Kate was sure. For the first time in 3 months, she felt solid ground beneath her feet. Leaving the courthouse, Kate stopped on the steps. The winter sun was blinding. The air was crisp and clean. She took a deep breath and smiled. She decided not to call Andrew, but to drive to his office, tell him in person, to see his face when he realized she had chosen him, that their family was going to survive. She drove across the city through congested streets, past snow-dusted yards and decorated shop windows. Her mood was light, almost festive. For the first time in months, Kate even turned on the radio and sang along to some silly pop song, completely off-key. Andrew's office was on the 4th floor of a modern office building. Kate took the elevator up and stepped out into the familiar hallway with gray walls and glass partitions. The receptionist recognized her and smiled. "Mr. Henderson is in his office. Go right in." Kate walked down the hall. Her heels clicked on the tile, the sound echoing off the walls like a metronome. The door to his office was slightly ajar, and a voice drifted out. Andrew was on the phone. Kate was about to knock, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the tone of his voice, not professional, not gentle, but smug, with a lazy chuckle. "I told you the fool would bite." Kate froze. Her hand hung in the air, inches from the door. The blood drained from her face. She stood in the hallway, pressed against the wall, and listened. Her body felt alien, her legs like cotton, her fingers icy, and a strange, ringing emptiness filled her head. Andrew continued, "Now she won't touch the house, and my business stays with me. 2 months of crawling on my knees, but hey, it paid off. You know, Jenna, with women, it's all about patience. They're all the same, they scream, they cry, and then they want to believe. It's easier for them. Kate's no exception. Smart, you'd think, but she fell for it like a teenager. She withdrew the papers today. That's it. I'm free." A pause. He was listening to the other end. Then he laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Of course, I'll come over. I'll tell her I have a late meeting tonight." The old reliable. "All right, kisses. I have to finish a report." A click. Silence. Kate didn't remember how she got out of the building. She didn't remember the elevator, the lobby, or whether she nodded to the receptionist. She came to on the street, in the freezing cold. Without her scarf, she'd left it in the car. The wind cut at her cheeks, but she didn't feel it. Inside, there was something else, something worse than cold. It was as if someone had opened the door to a room she had thought was warm and safe, only to reveal a void. No walls, no floor, no ceiling. Just a black, bottomless pit. She got into her car. Her hands were shaking so violently, she couldn't get the key into the ignition on the first try. Or the second. On the third, the engine started, but she didn't drive. She sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring ahead with unseeing eyes. The fool would bite. 3 words. Just 3 words, and the entire house of cards she had so carefully, so painfully rebuilt over 2 months, crumbled to dust. No, it didn't just crumble, it had never existed. She had been building on a void, on a lie, on the cold calculation of a man to whom she had entrusted her life. He hadn't left Jenna. He had never intended to. The tears, the sleepless nights, the hoarse voice on the phone, the trembling hands at the kitchen table, it was all a performance. A well-rehearsed, calculated play, with precisely timed pauses and just the right amount of remorse. 2 months on his knees because the house and his business were at stake. Not her, not Mikey, not their family. Assets. Kate suddenly laughed. A quiet, terrifying laugh, devoid of any humor. She laughed and then fell silent. She took out her phone, found Sarah's contact, and dialed. Sarah. Her voice was a hoarse, unrecognizable croak. "Can you come? I need help." Sarah was there in 20 minutes. Kate was still sitting in her car in the office building's parking lot. Her friend opened the passenger door, looked inside, and understood everything instantly. She didn't ask what happened, didn't offer platitudes. She just got in, sat next to her, and said, "Tell me." Kate told her, word for word, the entire conversation she had overheard. Sarah listened in silence, and Kate could see her face darken, her jaw clench. "That bastard," Sarah said when Kate finished. The words were calm, almost businesslike. Okay, so you withdrew the papers. That's bad, but you can file again. You need a lawyer, Kate, a shark. Not one who will nod sympathetically, but one who will tear him apart in court. I'm not thinking about court right now. You need to be. He just admitted he crawled on his knees for 2 months to protect his assets. That means there are assets to divide, and he knows it. If you fall apart now, he'll prepare. He'll transfer assets. Hide money guys like him know how to do that. Kate looked at her friend. Sarah was a lawyer, not family law, corporate, but she understood the game. And right now, she wasn't comforting. She was mobilizing, switching into the mode she used for negotiating with adversaries tough. Precise, point by point. Listen to me, Sarah continued. I know what you're feeling right now, but you have Mikey. You can't fall apart. You can fall apart later. I'll let you, I promise. We'll get wine. You can cry for 3 days straight. But first we handle this. Kate nodded. Sarah was right. Emotions could wait. Right now, she had to think. They drove to Sarah's place. On the way, Kate called her mother and asked her to keep Mikey for another day. Nina started asking questions, but Kate just said, Mom, later. Please, later. Her mother heard something in her voice and fell silent. At Sarah's kitchen table, over tea with lemon, Kate finally allowed herself to cry. Not like before, from hurt and pain. These tears were different, angry and bitter, and with them came something dark and venomous that had been building inside her for 2 months. I believed him, Sarah. I truly believed him. He cried, you know? He stood in our doorway, holding Mikey, and he cried. How can someone act like that? Is he even human? Sarah sat beside her, an arm around her shoulders, and said nothing. Sometimes, silence is the only honest answer. When the tears stopped, Kate washed her face with cold water, looked at her reflection in the mirror, puffy face, red eyes, and said aloud to it, Enough. She said it firmly, like an oath, not to herself, but to Mikey, her son, who deserved a mother who could stand on her own 2 feet. Not a victim, not a broken woman quietly swallowing her tears at the sink. A mother who knew how to protect herself and him. That evening, Sarah called a lawyer she knew. A woman named Laura Caldwell, tough, experienced, with a reputation that made dishonest husbands break out in a cold sweat. Sarah set up a meeting for the next day. Kate returned home late. The house greeted her with a familiar silence, but now it sounded different. Before, it had felt empty, lonely. Now, it felt peaceful. Kate walked through the rooms, touching the walls, the doorknobs, the spines of books on the shelf. This house had been bought with their joint funds, but the mortgage was in her name. The interest rates were better that way. She remembered that and, for the first time, thought of the impending divorce not as a tragedy, but as a problem. A problem with conditions, variables, and a solution. She was an architect. She knew how to solve problems. The phone rang at 1:00 p.m. Andrew. Hey. His voice was cheerful, affectionate. How was your day? I heard you stopped by the office, but you missed me. Kate's blood ran cold. The receptionist. Of course, she had told him his wife had come by. Yes, Kate answered in a level voice. I wanted to surprise you, but you weren't in your office. What a shame. I was just away for a minute. Let's do lunch tomorrow. To celebrate. You know, a new beginning. A new beginning. The words made Kate feel sick, but she held herself together. Sarah had warned her. Not a word about what she knew. Not a single hint. Not until she had spoken with a lawyer. Not until she had a strategy. She had to play her part. The part of the wife who believed, who forgave, and who was happy. Let's, she said. Tomorrow at 1? Perfect. I love you, Kate. She closed her eyes, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. I love you, too, she said, her voice soft, almost tender. She hung up, placed the phone on the table, and sat motionless for a long time, feeling something new hardening inside her, where hope had lived just that morning. It wasn't anger, not resentment. It was resolve, cold and clear, like the winter morning outside her window. Andrew wanted a war. He would get one. He just didn't know yet that he wouldn't be fighting the naive, trusting Kate who cried at the sink and believed in repentance. He would be fighting someone else, the woman who was no longer afraid to tear down walls, because she knew how to build new ones. Laura Caldwell was a short woman in her 50s, with a sharp haircut and a piercing gaze from her gray eyes. Her office was small and utilitarian, A desk, 2 chairs, a cabinet full of files, and a single photograph on the wall of her shaking hands with a man in a judge's robes. No flowers. No soft chairs. This was a place for work, not for comfort. "Tell me your story," she said, wasting no time on pleasantries. Kate told her. Briefly, factually, without emotion. She had rehearsed it all night in front of a mirror so her voice wouldn't break. Laura Caldwell listened, taking notes in a legal pad, never interrupting, never gasping or shaking her head. When Kate finished, the lawyer was silent for a few seconds, tapping her pen on the desk. "Do you have a recording of the conversation?" "No, I was just standing in the hallway. A shame, but not critical." "All right, your situation isn't simple, but it's workable. The house is mortgaged in your name. That's good. The business is a separate issue. If it's incorporated, dividing it will be harder, but not impossible. I need documents. Marriage certificate, mortgage details, everything you know about his assets. Bank accounts, cars, shares in companies. The more information, the stronger our position." "He's probably already hiding things," Kate said. "He admitted on the phone that this whole reconciliation was to protect his assets. Hiding assets isn't as easy as it sounds, especially if he wasn't prepared in advance. And from the sound of it, he thought you would come back, and that would be the end of it. That means he most likely hasn't transferred anything yet. We have a window. It's small, but it's there." Kate left the lawyer's office with a folder of paperwork, a list of things to gather, and a strange feeling, as if she had just put on a bulletproof vest. It was heavy and unfamiliar, but it felt safer. The following days were an ordeal. Kate lived a double life. By day, she gathered documents, met with her lawyer, and printed out bank statements. By night, she smiled at Andrew, had dinner with him, discussed Mikey's schoolwork, and played the part of a happy wife who had given him a second chance. With each passing day, the role became easier. Not because the pain was fading, but because her anger was solidifying into armor. Andrew suspected nothing. He was relaxed, cheerful, generous. He brought home gifts, joked at dinner, and played with Mikey. Kate watched him, amazed at how easily he could switch, how naturally he played the loving husband and doting father. Knowing that later that evening, he would be driving to Jenna's, there was no trace of remorse in him, not real, not the fake remorse from before. He was simply living as he pleased, using people as tools. The hardest part was Mikey. Her son had blossomed, seeing his parents together again. He was talkative, laughed at dinner, told them about school, his friends, and the new gym teacher who had a funny way of blowing his whistle. Kate would look at his happy face and feel something tear inside her. She knew that what she was about to do would shatter his world again, this time for good, but to leave things as they were meant, living a lie. And sooner or later, Mikey would figure it out himself. Children always sense falsehood. Maybe not right away, but they do. "Mom, are you and Dad not going to fight anymore?" he asked one night before bed. Kate sat on the edge of his bed and brushed the hair from his forehead. "Mikey," she said softly, "no matter what happens, we both love you. Always. That's the only thing I can promise you." He looked at her intently, with an adult-like seriousness, and nodded, as if he understood more than she had said. A week later, Laura Caldwell called and asked for a meeting. She had news. "I've run a check on your husband through public records," the lawyer said, laying out printouts on her desk. An interesting picture emerges. The company he works for, he's not just a department head. He's a co-owner. He holds a 20% stake, registered in his name, acquired during your marriage. That means, in a divorce, you are entitled to half the value of that stake. Kate stared at the numbers, not believing her eyes. Andrew had never told her about a share in the company. She knew he earned well, that he got bonuses, but a 20% owner of a development firm. "He hid this from me," she said quietly. "It was likely registered about a year and a half ago. Additionally, there's a savings account that I assume you also didn't know about." Kate shook her head. "This is why he was so afraid of the divorce," Laura continued. "And this is why he spent 2 months on his knees. In a normal divorce proceeding, you would have gotten half of everything acquired during the marriage. The house, the business share, the savings, the cars. He knew that and decided to be clever. Win you back, calm you down, and then slowly move the assets. But I already withdrew the petition. He thinks he's won." "Exactly. And that's our advantage. While he's relaxed, thinking the danger has passed, we will prepare everything. We'll file the new petition when we are fully ready. so he has no countermove. Kate left the office and sat on a bench outside. It was cold, and the wind was blowing, but she just sat there, thinking, not about the money or the business share. She was thinking about how the man she had lived with for 12 years was a stranger. Not just an unfaithful husband that she could have possibly understood, survived, maybe one day forgiven, but a calculating manipulator who could cry on command and play with his own child's feelings to protect his money. That evening, her mother called. Kate told her everything, holding nothing back this time. Nina was silent for a long time, then said, her voice quiet and unfamiliar, "Kate, I want you to know you are stronger than I ever was. I just ran away from your father. You are standing and fighting. I'm proud of you." Kate hung up and sat in the dark living room for a long time. She wasn't fighting. It didn't feel like it. She was just doing what had to be done. Step by step, like in one of her projects, foundation, frame, walls, roof. Only this project wasn't a house. It was a new life. Hers and Mikey's. Without Andrew. The hardest part wasn't being silent. It was smiling. Kate mastered it over 2 weeks. Smiling when Andrew called during the day and said, "I miss you." Smiling when he came home in the evening with a bouquet and a bottle of wine. Smiling when he held her before bed and whispered, "It's so good we didn't break." She smiled, and every smile was like swallowing a shard of glass. Sarah called every day. Not to console, but to check in. Short, businesslike conversations. "Did you get the documents? Did you pick up the bank statement? Did you send it to Laura?" Sarah became her command center, her support, her rear guard. Without her, Kate might not have made it. Not from the pain, but from the duplicity. Living in 2 realities at once was exhausting. In one, she was the forgiving wife. In the other, a woman planning a strategic strike. On the 3rd week of this double life, something unexpected happened. Andrew brought Mikey home from a walk, and as their son was taking off his coat in the entryway, he suddenly said, "Mom, who is Aunt Jenna?" Kate froze. The saucepan in her hands went numb. "What?" she asked, trying to keep her voice normal. "Some Aunt Jenna called Dad." He walked away and talked quietly. I asked who it was, and he said it was for work. But he was smiling, and not like it was for work. Kate slowly put the saucepan on the stove, turned to her son, and knelt in front of him. "Probably a colleague," she said calmly. "Dad has a lot of people at work. Go wash your hands. Dinner's almost ready." Mikey left, and Kate stood by the stove, watching the water come to a boil. So, he wasn't even hiding it anymore. Taking her call in front of their child, smiling at another woman, not like it was for work. A 10-year-old boy had noticed what she had refused to see for 2 months. Children really do sense falsehood faster than adults. That evening, after Andrew left for yet another meeting, another lazy lie, Kate called Laura Caldwell. "I can't wait any longer. How much more time do you need?" "A week," the lawyer answered. "We're almost ready. We just need to get an independent valuation of his share in the company. I've engaged an appraiser. He works fast. Hold on just a little longer." Kate held on, but that week was harder than all the previous ones. Every night, lying next to Andrew, she felt a physical revulsion, not even for him, but for the situation, for the necessity of pretending. She started sleeping poorly, shadows forming under her eyes. Andrew noticed. "You look tired," he said at breakfast. "Maybe you should take a day off? Get some rest. The project's on fire." The familiar excuse. She had repeated the phrase so many times over the past months it had become a reflex. "You're working too much, Kate. You're not made of steel." She looked at him, at that concerned, caring face, at the smile lines around his eyes that she once found so charming, and felt a wave of nausea. Not made of steel, that's right. But she was stronger than he thought. Stronger than she had thought herself. Laura Caldwell called on Thursday. "It's done. The valuation, the statements, the mortgage agreement. It's all filed. The petition is ready. Come in and sign it." Kate went during her lunch break. She signed. Her hand didn't shake. She checked, just like the first time. Only now, this was not a signature of pain. The first time, she had filed out of hurt. The second, out of clarity. "He'll be served within 3 days," Laura said. "Be prepared for his reaction. He'll try to pressure you through pity, through the child, maybe through threats. Don't fall for any of it. All contact goes through me. If he comes to the house, he has the right, until the housing issue is settled. But you also have the right not to open the door if you feel threatened. If he pressures you, call me. Anytime." Kate returned home and began to pack Andrew's things. Methodically, neatly, just like she drew her blueprints. Shirts, suits, shoes, books, toiletries from the bathroom. She packed them into boxes and set them in the hallway. It took 3 hours. 3 hours to pack away 12 years of marriage into 6 cardboard boxes. Then she picked up Mikey from school. They drove to her mother's. Kate decided it would be best to spend the next few days at Nina's. Not out of fear, but out of practicality. Mikey didn't need to see what was about to happen when Andrew found out. "Are we visiting Grandma?" Mikey asked in the car. "Yes, sweetie, for a few days." "What about Dad?" Dad needs to take care of some things. At work. He'll come by later." Mikey fell silent, looking out the window at the passing houses, trees, and streetlights. Then he said quietly, "Mom, you're fighting again, aren't you?" Kate gripped the steering wheel tighter. She could lie. She had lied to him so many times in the last few months. "Dad's on a business trip. Dad's at work. We're fine." "Enough." "Mikey," she said, her eyes on the road. "I'm not going to lie to you. Dad and I are going through a difficult time. I'm trying to make things okay for you, but I need you to trust me, even if you don't understand everything. Can you do that?" "I can," he said seriously, and then he added, "Just don't cry, okay? I don't like it when you cry." Kate bit her lip and nodded. She didn't cry, though the tears were so close they burned her eyes. At Nina's, it was warm and smelled of pies. Her mother opened the door, looked at her daughter and grandson, and just said, "Come in. The room is ready." She didn't ask questions. Kate had warned her on the phone. Nina focused on Mikey, sat him at the table, brought out homemade jam and cookies, and turned on a cartoon for him. Kate went to her old room small, with faded wallpaper and the narrow bed she had slept in as a child, and sat by the window. It was getting dark early. The streetlight in the yard was already on, casting a yellow glow on the snow. Her phone was silent. Andrew didn't know anything yet. But tomorrow, or the day after, in 3 days, he would know. And then it would begin. Kate was ready. Andrew called on Friday evening. Kate was at her mother's stove, stirring soup. When the screen lit up with his name, she just stared at the phone for a few seconds. Then she answered. "Kate, I just got home, and there are boxes here. What's going on?" His voice was confused, but not yet scared. Not yet. He hadn't understood. "They're your things," Kate said evenly. "I packed them." "What do you mean? Why? What happened?" "I filed for divorce." Again. Silence. A long, thick silence. Kate could hear his breathing, rapid and ragged. "Kate, are you kidding me? We fixed everything. You said so yourself." "Andrew," she cut him off. "I was standing in the hallway outside your office. The day I withdrew the papers. I heard your conversation with Jenna. Every single word. The fool would bite, remember?" Silence again. But this time it was different. Not confused, but dead. Kate could almost physically feel the entire structure he had so carefully built on the other end of the line collapsing. His whole scheme, his calculation, his 2 months on his knees, it all crumbled in a single second. "Kate, you misunderstood," he began, his voice changing, becoming hurried, almost frantic. "That was a work call. Jenna and I were discussing a client. He's been giving us a hard time for ages. I was talking about him." "Don't," Kate said. "Please, just don't. You lied to my face for 2 months. You cried while holding your own son. And that was a lie, too. You used Mikey to make me believe you. You used my trust to save your money. I know about the share in the company, Andrew. The 20% you never once mentioned to me. I know about the savings account. And my lawyer knows even more." "What lawyer?" His voice was different now, hard and sharp. The mask had dropped in an instant, like makeup in the rain. "You hired a lawyer? Behind my back?" "Behind your back." Kate let out an involuntary, humorless laugh. "Are you seriously talking about behind my back? You, to me. Listen, let's just meet. Talk this out like adults. No lawyers, no drama. All contact will be through my lawyer. Her name is Laura Caldwell. I'll text you her number. Don't call me again, Andrew. If you want to see Mikey, we'll discuss it through the court. You can't take my son from me. I'm not taking anything. I'm protecting him. From you." She hung up. Her hands were shaking for the first time in all this. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump, like after jumping from a great height, flying, not knowing if the parachute will open. Nina was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching her daughter in silence. Then she walked over, turned off the stove, and said, "Sit. I'll finish this." Kate sat. Her mother placed a cup of peppermint tea in front of her. She had always done that when Kate was sick as a child. Peppermint for all ailments. Kate wrapped her hands around the mug and closed her eyes. "He's going to push back," her mother said. "I know his type. First, they beg. Then they threaten. I have a good lawyer. A lawyer is one thing, but your nerves are another. Take care of yourself, Katie." Nina was right. Andrew started pushing the very next day. Not with calls. He understood Kate wouldn't talk to him. He acted differently, through other people. First, he called Sarah. "Talk to her," he told Kate's friend. "She's making a mistake. I'm willing to do anything to save our family. Tell her I've changed." Sarah listened silently, then replied, "Andrew, I'm going to say this once. I know what you said on the phone. Kate told me, word for word. You called her a fool. You lied to her face for 2 months. Don't call me again. And if you try to use Mikey as leverage, I will personally make sure the court hears every single detail." Andrew hung up. Sarah called Kate and relayed the conversation. "He's panicking," she said. "That's good. People in a panic make mistakes." Then Andrew called Nina. It was a bold move, even for him. Kate's mother picked up, listened to his first 2 sentences, and said, "I tolerated you for 12 years because my daughter loved you. Now she doesn't, and I can finally tell you what I've thought from the very beginning. You are an unworthy man, Andrew. Not a man at all, a boy playing at being a man. Do not call me. Do not come to my house. And if you show up here, I will call the police." Kate, who overheard the call, stood in the hall with her hand over her mouth to keep from laughing a nervous, hysterical laugh. Her mother, the quiet Nina who had spent her life avoiding conflict, who had withdrawn into herself for 20 years after her husband left, had finally fought back. She had protected not just herself, but her daughter. 3 days later, Andrew was officially served with the divorce papers, along with a list of property claims compiled by Laura Caldwell. Kate imagined him reading it. The share in the company, the savings account, the house, the car, all documented, all proven. She could almost hear him grinding his teeth. His reaction was predictable. He hired a lawyer, an expensive one from a big firm. 2 days later, Laura Caldwell received a counterclaim. Andrew was contesting the division of the company's share, claiming it was purchased with personal funds acquired before the marriage. A lie, but one that had to be disproven. "Don't worry," Laura said over the phone. "We have the bank statements. The money for the share was transferred from a joint account opened during the marriage. He can say whatever he wants. The numbers don't lie." The court date was set for a month and a half later. A month and a half of waiting, nerves, and sleepless nights. Kate worked. The project really was on fire, and that saved her. When your head is full of calculations and blueprints, there's less room for pain. Mikey asked fewer and fewer questions. It was as if he understood, with a child's intuition, that his mom was having a hard time, and it was best not to bother her. He did his homework on his own, helped his grandmother in the kitchen, and didn't ask to stay out late. Kate looked at him and thought, he's 10, and he's acting like he's 30. And that wasn't right. A child shouldn't have to be an adult, shouldn't have to tiptoe around someone else's pain. One evening, she went into his room and saw him sitting on his bed, drawing. Mikey wasn't an artist. The drawings were typical for a kid, uneven, bright. But this one made Kate stop in the doorway. On the paper was a house lopsided, with big windows and a red roof. In front of the house stood 3 figures, a tall woman, a boy, and a man. But the man was drawn only in pencil, colorless, gray, ghostly, as if half erased. "Is that us?" Kate asked, sitting beside him. "Aha," Mikey didn't look up. "I just didn't know what color to make Dad. So he's like this for now." A lump formed in Kate's throat. She hugged her son, buried her nose in the top of his head, and just sat there, breathing in the smell of his shampoo and pencil shavings. "Mikey," she said finally, "I need to tell you something important. Dad and I are going to live apart. For good. But that doesn't mean Dad doesn't love you. And it's definitely not because of you. Do you hear me?" "I hear you," he said, his voice muffled. "But will you be happy?" The question hit her like a punch to the gut. A 10-year-old boy, who should be thinking about soccer and cartoons, was asking if his mother would be happy. Kate pulled back, looked him in his serious, observant, father's eyes, and said, "I will be. I promise." She wasn't sure if it was the truth, but she knew she had to try. For this boy with a pencil in his hand, who was drawing a ghost father, and waiting for an honest answer from his mother, The court date was a couple of weeks away. Kate counted the days like a rocket launch countdown, with a mix of anticipation and fear. She had lost 10 pounds in the last month, even though Nina was feeding her with a persistence worthy of a better cause. Soup, meatballs, pies, pancakes. Kate ate because it upset her mother if she didn't, and because Mikey watched her with a quiet anxiety in his eyes. Work kept her afloat. The project she had been slaving over for months, a residential complex with an inner courtyard, was nearing completion. Her boss, Paul, a burly man with thick eyebrows and a surprisingly gentle voice, called her into his office. "Kate, I don't meddle in personal lives, but I can see you're going through something. If you need time off, I'll give it to you, no questions asked. Just say the word." "I don't," she answered. "On the contrary, I need to work, or I'll go crazy." He nodded, not arguing. He just added, "You did an excellent job on this project. The client is thrilled. I want to offer you a promotion. Senior architect. Starting in April. Think about it." Kate left his office and leaned against the wall. A promotion. She had been waiting for it for 3 years, and it came now, in the middle of the ruins of her personal life, as if the universe had decided to give her something in return. Andrew didn't back down. He changed tactics. He stopped calling, texting, and pressuring her through people. Instead, he started working through Mikey. Not directly, he was smarter than that. He just started showing up at the school, waiting for his son after classes, walking with him, buying him ice cream, taking him to the movies. Technically, he had the right. The court hadn't yet ruled on custody, but Kate felt the calculation behind this fatherly concern. Mikey would come home happy, telling her all about his dad, and every story was like a small knife. "Dad said he misses us a lot. Dad said he wants to come back. Dad said Mom misunderstood him." Kate listened, clenching her teeth. She couldn't and wouldn't explain to a 10-year-old that his father was a manipulator. It would be cruel to Mikey, and to herself, because a child couldn't handle the whole truth, and a half-truth was just another lie. She called Laura Caldwell. "He's turning our son against me. Not with words, but with the atmosphere. He's playing the perfect father." "It's a common tactic," the lawyer replied unflappably. "Document everything. Dates, times, what exactly he told the child. It will be useful in court. And do not react emotionally in front of your son. That's the most important thing." Kate documented. She started a notebook where she wrote down every meeting between Andrew and Mikey, every phrase her son repeated. The notebook filled up, page by page, and with each new entry, Kate became more convinced. The man she had married no longer existed. Or perhaps he never had. Perhaps she had invented him, drawn him on a blank page, just as Mikey had drawn the gray ghost. A week before the court date, Andrew came to Nina's house. He didn't call, didn't warn her. He was just standing at the gate at 7 a.m. when Kate came out to take Mikey to school. She saw him and stopped on the porch. He looked terrible thinner, with sunken cheeks, unshaven. His coat was wrinkled, as if he'd slept in it. "Kate," he said, "5 minutes. No lawyers, no witnesses. Just you and me. I have nothing to say to you. But I do. Please." Mikey stood beside her, looking from his mother to his father. Kate didn't want a scene in front of him. "Mikey, get in the car. I'll be right there." Her son obeyed. Kate came down the steps and walked to the gate, but didn't open it. The wooden slats were a thin, symbolic barrier between them that felt insurmountable. "Talk," she said. "I was wrong. I know that. What you heard at the office, it was disgusting. But I was saying what Jenna wanted to hear. Do you understand? I was putting on an act for her, not for you. You were putting on an act for everyone, Andrew. That's the problem. You've been acting for so long you don't even know what the truth is anymore. The truth is that I can't live without you too. Without you and Mikey. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Everything at work is falling apart because I can't focus. I've lost everything. You didn't lose it. You threw it away. There's a difference." He stood there, his lips trembling. Kate looked at him, searching inside herself for a shred of pity. She found none. Where love had once lived, then pain, then anger, there was now a void, a smooth, calm emptiness, like the surface of a frozen lake. "I'll withdraw the lawsuit," he said suddenly. "The one about the assets. I'll give you everything, the house, the share, all of it. Just don't take Mikey away." Kate narrowed her eyes. It could be the truth, or it could be a new move. With Andrew, she could no longer tell the difference. But in this case, it didn't matter. "No one is taking Mikey from you. You're his father. The court will determine a visitation schedule, but he will live with me. I want to see him every day. The court will decide that. Kate. Please. Andrew. I have to take my son to school. She turned, got in the car, and pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, she could see Andrew. He was standing by the gate, his hands hanging at his sides, watching them drive away. Mikey turned and waved to his father through the back window. Kate saw Andrew raise a hand and wave back. The hearing was on a Wednesday. The courthouse, the familiar hallway with government-issued chairs, the smell of paper and something acidic. Laura Caldwell was by her side, calm, collected, with a folder of documents as thick as a brick. Andrew sat across the aisle with his lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit with a look of professional confidence frozen on his face. Kate tried not to look at Andrew, but in her peripheral vision, she saw him fiddling with a pen, a familiar nervous habit. She remembered him doing the same thing at a parent-teacher conference at Mikey's school, when the teacher complained that the boy talked too much in class. Andrew had leaned over to her and whispered, "I wonder who he gets that from." She had laughed, and the teacher had glared at them. A different life. Someone else's life. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Laura Caldwell spoke calmly, methodically, laying out documents before the judge like playing cards. Bank statements proving the company's share was bought with joint funds. The mortgage agreement in Kate's name. The appraiser's report. Andrew's lawyer tried to object, arguing the funds were his client's personal savings. But the numbers didn't add up, and the judge could see it. The judgment was delivered a week later. The house was awarded to Kate and Mikey. The company's share was to be divided. Andrew could either buy out Kate's half at market value or sell the share and split the proceeds. The savings account was divided equally. Mikey would live with his mother. Andrew was granted visitation rights on weekends. Laura Caldwell called with the results, and Kate just stood in the middle of the room for a long time, the phone pressed to her ear, saying nothing. "You won," the lawyer said. "Congratulations." Won. A strange word. Kate didn't feel victorious, didn't feel joy. She felt a deep, heavy exhaustion, like after a long illness. The illness was over, and now she had to learn to live again. Without the fever, without the delirium, without the hallucinations of a happy marriage. She hung up, walked out of the room, and saw her mother standing in the hallway. Nina didn't ask anything, just looked at her. "It's over, Mom," Kate said. And Nina finally cried, for the first time in all those months. Not from sorrow, not from pity, from relief. Spring arrived quietly, the way it always does after a long winter. Not all at once, but in pieces. First, the smell of wet earth, then the chirping of sparrows on the eaves, then the puddles began to reflect the sky instead of gray asphalt. Kate stood on the porch of her house, and breathed in the air, damp and fresh, like a blank page. She and Mikey had moved back from Nina's in early March, right after the court's decision. Kate had been afraid the house would feel alien, saturated with memories, poisoned by lies. But when she opened the door and stepped into the entryway, she felt an unexpected silence. Not the deafening silence that had followed Andrew's departure in November, but a different, kind, peaceful, and all hers. Mikey ran in first, tearing through the rooms. Peeking into his own, everything was in its place. His Lego sets on the shelf, the dinosaur poster above his bed, and shouted from deep inside the house, "Mom, I'm home." Kate smiled. 2 words, and something inside her let go, as if a fist that had been squeezing her heart for the last 4 months had finally unclenched. The first week, she got used to the new rhythm. Coffee in the morning, by herself. Breakfast for Mikey, by herself. Driving him to school, driving to the firm, blueprints, meetings, lunch at her desk. Picking him up, homework, dinner, a book before bed. No one made her coffee in the morning, no one left notes on the nightstand. And it was okay. Not painful, not sad. Just normal. Like a healed fracture. The bone had set, a scar remained, but she could walk. In April, Kate started her new position, senior architect. She got her own office small, with a view of the poplar tree outside the window and 2 assistants, young kids fresh out of college. She taught them what she knew, to listen to a space, to feel the light, to think about the people who would live within those walls. A house isn't a box, she would tell them. A house is a promise, that it will be warm here, and safe and honest. She caught herself on the word honest and paused. Her assistants didn't notice, but Kate did. Honesty. That's what had been missing from her marriage. Not love, not passion, not shared interests. Honesty. The foundation had been rotten from the start. She just hadn't wanted to look down. Andrew saw Mikey on weekends. He would come by on Saturday morning, pick him up, and bring him back Sunday evening. Kate would open the door, hand over their son, and close it. Silently, without extra words. They didn't speak. They communicated through short text messages, picking him up at 10, dropping him off at 7. Mikey has a fever, can't make it today. Dry, businesslike, like neighbors sharing a parking spot. After his visits with his father, Mikey would come back pensive, but calm, not sad, just pensive, as if he were digesting something. Kate didn't ask questions. She waited for him to talk, and he would in snippets, over dinner or before bed. Dad lives in a small apartment. He says it's temporary. Dad has our picture on his fridge, the old one from the beach. Dad asked how I was doing. I said, okay. That's right, isn't it, Mom? That's right, Kate would answer. Okay. One day, in late April, when the poplar tree outside her office window was covered in its first green leaves, Mikey came home from school and said, Mom, Dad doesn't smile the same way he used to. You know, he used to smile really big. He doesn't anymore. It's like he's tired. Kate knelt in front of her son and looked him in the eyes. It's a hard time for Dad right now, Mikey. But he'll be okay. Grown-ups figure it out. Did you figure it out? She thought for a second. A real thought, not for show, not to comfort him. Had she? The pain still lived inside her, curled up somewhere beneath her ribs. A dull ache. It surfaced at unexpected moments when that one song played on the radio. The one she had sung along to on her way to Andrew's office, when she saw his favorite cheese at the supermarket. When Mikey laughed a certain way, exactly like his father. But it no longer controlled her. It didn't dictate her decisions. Didn't fill her eyes with tears. Didn't suffocate her at night. I'm figuring it out, she answered. A little bit more every day. Sarah came over on Fridays. They would drink wine and talk no longer about the divorce. No longer about Andrew, but about life, about work, about books, about Mikey, about how Sarah had finally decided to get a dog and named her Marshmallow because she was white and round. You've changed, Sarah said one evening, looking at her friend over her wine glass. You used to be, I don't know, softer. Now, there's a steel spine in you. It was always there. I just let myself not lean on it. Nina came on Wednesdays, bringing pies and playing chess with Mikey. He had learned over the winter and now beat his grandmother half the time. Her mother had changed, too. She was more talkative, more alive. It was as if Kate's story, not just her pain, but her strength had awakened something in Nina that had been dormant for 20 years. I signed up for a painting class, her mother announced casually one day, arranging pastries on a plate. What? Kate almost dropped her mug. Watercolor. Tuesdays and Thursdays. The instructor is a young woman, very patient. She says I have a good hand. Kate looked at her mother, at her flushed cheeks and the sparkle in her eyes, and felt something warm and unfamiliar rise within her. It wasn't happiness. Happiness was still a long way off, but something like hope. A sense that life hadn't ended. It had just turned a corner. In May, Kate took Mikey fishing herself. Without Andrew. They sat on the bank, the bobbers frozen in the still water, the sun warming their backs, the air smelling of grass and warm earth. Mom, Mikey said, not taking his eyes off his bobber. Will you ever love someone again, like you loved Dad? Kate paused. An honest question deserved an honest answer. I don't know, sweetie. Maybe. But right now, I'm happy just with you. And that's enough. He nodded, and suddenly the bobber twitched, sank beneath the water, and Mikey jumped up, grabbing the rod. The chaos began. The line went taut. The boy yelled. Kate rushed to help. They pulled together, laughing, stumbling over each other. And when the fish, a small, silly sunfish, flopped onto the grass, they both collapsed beside it, laughing until they cried. Kate lay on the grass, looking up at the bottomless May sky with its fluffy clouds, and she thought, this is it. This was the feeling she had thought was lost forever. Not happiness. Simpler. Peace. She was no longer building a house on someone else's foundation. She was standing on her own.